Hello, hello, hello. Good evening and welcome everyone. Welcome to Time to Talk, our bi-weekly program where we talk about mediumship. Hi, Faye. How are you? Good evening. How are you doing?
Hello, good evening, Rafael. Good evening, everyone. Nice to be here again.
Very nice to be
Very
here again.
nice.
Yeah.
Yes.
As usual, this is one of my favorite times of the week because I got to spend
Yes.
some time talking to Faye and trying to understand and learn a little bit more about mediumship. And if it's the first time you're coming across Time to Talk, what is Time to Talk? So, Time to Talk is a program where our intention is to bring different topics about mediumship in for us to discuss, for us to have a conversation about, for us to have a chat about. The idea is that we start to see this phenomena with the naturality that it actually has of its nature. After all, mediumship is just part of everyday life. It happens everywhere. It's been happening since forever. And the idea is just to break some of the ideas and stigmas around it. And we bring the opinion and the ideas based on Spiritism. Spiritism pretty much was built upon mediumship, and that is probably one of the main values, like to bring that understanding of the interactions between the incarnate and the discarnate world. But anyways, what are we going to talk about today? Today is our episode 67, and we're going to talk about visual manifestations. And I will tell you what that is in a second. But before we start, the usual, our broadcasters need to say thank you very, very much to Spiritist Society of London, SSL. SSL is a Spiritist group here in the UK that is dedicated to studying Spiritism. So we have some online sessions and face-to-face sessions dedicated to studying and practicing Spiritism. Go check and follow our pages if you'd like to know more about us. SSL is affiliated to BUS, the British Union of Spiritist Societies. BUS works like a Spiritist federation here in the UK, trying to connect and help the different Spiritist groups here in the United Kingdom. And our third broadcaster is Kardec Radio, which has been around also for many, many years now, committed to bringing content about Spiritism in English and other languages, but mostly English, across the globe. There is a lot of content from Kardec Radio. Go check their page as well. Like them, follow them so you don't miss out on the content. There's a lot. So, episode 67 is visual manifestations. And what does that even mean? Why are we talking about this? So as usual, Faye, we have some chats offline in between programs to try to understand, okay, what would be the subjects that will make more sense for us to bring up if there's something going on at the moment, something in the news or something that comes to mind. And this time, that was my idea. I have to say that. But today, I'm going to take the credit for the idea. I hope it's a good program. But I was thinking about what kind of subject is interesting for people to hear about. And one of the first things that came to my mind is ghosts. Seeing ghosts.
Oh, yes.
The apparition of ghosts. I don't think anyone can say that they never heard about a story of a haunted place, or that somebody saw someone and it disappeared, or that somebody used to live in a house and then they saw something in the house, or there's always stories, right? And I think, of course, like everything else we're not talking about just anecdotes that were created and so on. and a lot of it could be imagination and on, but we're talking about the actual real experiences that have been investigated, have been studied, and have been clarified through mediumship. And that is what I would like to bring up for us to discuss today. And yeah, let's explore what that means. Faye, I always go to you with an initial question.
Yes.
And it's usually the same question, which is, when we talk about visual manifestations, and when I said, Faye, let's talk about seeing or apparitions, what came to your mind?
Well, it's I think this is probably I would say the core idea. Whenever we talk about, I would imagine people talk about spiritualism, spiritism. There is always this other way. Are they going to talk about the ghosts? Are there ghosts? Is it something for imagination? Well, it's if you think, well, where there's smoke, there must be fire. Meaning the stories are there, the accounts are there, not for no reasons, not just a matter of imagination, but it's because the stories, and they become stories with a bit more of fancy, a bit more of imagination or not. But the fact is that they are based, they're based on human experience, not for just yesterday or a few years ago, but of things that have always been there. And you mentioned the talking about houses, and in the media today, there are programs, and there's always someone posting a photo of a tour, of being on tour somewhere in Pompeii, and then someone appears in the middle of the road in the Pompeii, kind of blurred, but sometimes not so blurred. And they say, well, is that fake? Well, that can be true. It can be true, and it's very scientifically explained. So it's not something that's done to scare people away, make people frightened and have nightmares. No. But this is what I think about. It's everywhere, but not so talked about as I would expect. So I think that we have a chance here to delve into the subject and bring some more facts that hopefully will make it more interesting, because it is interesting, and less of something that's frightening, because it's not meant to be frightening.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. I'm reading a book from Camille Flammarion in preparation for the series that we are hosting. Right, we're hosting this year.
That's right.
About Camille Flammarion. Mm-hmm. And the book I'm reading, it's called Haunted Houses.
Okay.
And I'm still in the beginning of it. I'm only reading the first couple of chapters, but there's something very, very interesting, because last year when I was preparing for the talk about Gabriel Delan, I was reading about the materialization of the living and the dead. So that possibility. So Delan was talking. That was pretty much a book from Gabriel Delan talking about a categorization of all types of different mediumistic phenomena. Mm-hmm. And now I'm reading about I'm reading from Flammarion about haunted houses and like the spirits, apparition of spirits. Yeah. And in both of them, they list a lot of cases and letters. And again, we're talking about 1800, middle of 1800s. So it's not, there is no AI generated videos or
no internet.
it was purely people. There was a lot of scholars and scientists investigating the mediumistic phenomena, and they were pretty much, as they were publishing things, people would write to them, providing more anecdotal stories about that, without any other intention apart from, here, I also go through this, you describe this, and I have this experience, and so on. And then the chapter 1 of this book, coming from my own, he's pretty much answering to it's like a counterpoint or a counter argument to somebody else who disbelieves those mediumship. And he goes on to describe dozens and dozens and dozens of a very common phenomenon, which is somebody who has not seen or heard about someone else, usually used to be a close friend, but they've been away for a while, or a family member that lives in a different country, or somebody that there was some sort of connection with the person, but they were geographically apart, and maybe not very close in the last kind of recent years and so on. And the letters are pretty much telling and describing in detail that one night, for some reason, they saw that person. A person came in and told them, "Oh, I have to say goodbye. I'm sorry. Or this happened. It wasn't my fault." So there's like usually a very vivid perception of that person. They see, they hear. Sometimes more than one person in a house will hear a noise. They will see the person walking in or leaving, and in the next day or so, or the next week, they will receive the news that that person had passed in those conditions, in those dates, in that time, and the time they appeared, and so on, and they were wearing this, or the situation, the circumstances where they passed away. They mentioned something about that when in their apparition. And he goes on to say that he has thousands, not hundreds, has thousands of letters of people giving that account. So, can we see that? Can spirits render themselves visible? I would answer a resounding yes.
Yes, they can.
How? Why? How does that work? How do you think, Faye?
Well, the process is something that resembles images that we've seen in cinema, for example. I believe that there was a film, I think called Invisible Man. It's a science fiction, but in the end, it is like that. A man who's become invisible in the story, but then in order to be seen, he needed something around him to cover his shape, so that he would be seen or perceived by other people. But that was science fiction. For someone who was living. Now, if you assume that we are all, as spirits, we're all energy, and we have this shell, we have this shape to live, just as if people were having to work and live underwater, they would be wearing appropriate garments and covers so that they would survive and do what they had to do that. So we're not underwater, we're above water. So we're living on the surface. So everyone and everything has got a cover for the spirit essence, for the spiritual essence.
Yeah.
But we remain inside, we remain as energy. Once this cover wears out, once we pass on, we don't have that cover. We still carry on as energy, the energy body. Yeah. Now, so for that, if one is in an energy body state, to be seen into this one, you need some sort of cover again. That energy will have to transform itself in the way that either the spirit has the ability to manipulate energy to make themselves seen, or they will need a helping hand. They will need some energy that's produced by someone else, say a medium, that can help coat his outer shape as seen.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yes. Totes. I like that. Okay, let's go with that one first. Because that one is probably one that is that where operations can be kind of seen usually for more than one per people, because you specifically talking about operation, and I think that's an important distinction.
Yes.
As you said, we all have, when we are here incarnated, when we have our bodies, of course we can see one another, we reflect our normal light, electric light, sunlight, we have said that's how we see one another. But as we leave our bodies behind, as we pass away, the body that we carry with us is a much more ethereal one that we cannot see, perceive with our eyes, with our physical eyes.
Mm-hmm.
So you're right. But you started to talk here about so if a spirit needs to be seen, it wants to make itself seen
Mm-hmm.
to anyone, any person, then it needs some help to make that ethereal body to become more physical, to become more dense.
Mm-hmm.
And you already used our keyword, use mediums, and you can use the help of a medium for that. So how, just so I can extrapolate a little bit on that, how does that work? There are specific types of mediums that their ability is to produce a specific type of material or matter. Let me take a step back, actually. All of us produce that type of matter, which is a bit more subtle than our dense body, which is ectoplasm. People call it other things, but in the end, it's the same. And ectoplasm is nothing but a different state of matter, right? It's matter, just like everything else that is produced and we can physically touch, but it has a subtler energy or subtler density.
Yes.
And specific mediums that can produce that in abundance, sometimes they can even lend some of their own matter in the form of ectoplasm to be manipulated to a spirit in a specific seance. Then the mediums who are equipped to understand, who know how to do these things, they are allowed to do so. They can manipulate the ectoplasm and generate a form that is visible for everybody with their own physical eyes. So in that case, you're talking about spirits that, using energy, make themselves physically visible. They will be able to be photographed, and you have many cases of that in the past in experiences. They'll be able to be seen by anyone, regardless of the mediumistic abilities.
Mm-hmm.
That's the example you're giving, right? That's the one you mentioned first.
Yes.
Is that the only way?
I don't think so.
What would be another case?
Well, you mentioned the ones that are helped by the medium and can be seen by those who would have the ability to see them. Is that what you said?
Mm-hmm.
And there are others that can render themselves visible to a crowd or to more people, regardless of whether they have mediumistic ability or not.
Yeah. The materialization that I described is the second one.
Yeah.
Yeah. What about the first one?
Well, how about the first one? Because I could think of the one in which, yes, how does the first one happen if not making use of the fluids that is donated for them?
Yeah.
They vibrate at different levels.
Yeah. So I think there are two main. As I think about it, actually, maybe there's even more than two. But the two main ones. The first one would be, as you described, the materialized apparitions.
Mm-hmm.
The mediumship that we're talking about here is that physical effects mediumship, where the medium donates ectoplasm and the spirit uses that.
Right.
The other one is when spirits are not seen by everyone.
Mm-hmm.
They are only seen by mediums who have the ability to see that level of less denser body.
Yes.
So we started to think about maybe psychics or maybe people that can perceive things, people that can see things. And I think this is also something that has been happening since forever, right? We will always, again, I will take the risk and say that we always hear in our lives the story of somebody who saw something, was able to, or he is able to see something.
Yes.
The one example that's coming to my mind for now is Givaldo. It's a famous medium in Brazil, very much dedicated for charity work, and he has many stories that he tells about it. But I particularly remember that in different moments of his life, he was accompanied by different spirits that were helping him, guiding him, challenging him, many different things. When he was a kid, the first time that his mediumship was, I guess, established is from the age of 4. He developed this relationship with the spirit of a native kid from Brazil that would be showing himself in indigenous costumes and so on. And that spirit kid, was always with him, playing with him, going place with him, up until the age of, I can't remember now, for 7 or 10, something like that. That's when that spirit said, look, from now on, there will be different companions and I need to go prepare myself because I am going to be born again.
Mm.
But for many years, from the age of 4 until this, I can't remember when it was, there was a constant companion for him. And of course, his parents used to see him playing, outside in the yard and so on, and they would only see him, and he would be there talking and playing and interacting with that spiritual companion. How many of us have not heard about similar cases or had similar stories?
Yeah, and it's interesting that when it's mentioned Divaldo, I remembered. I thought of one of his stories as a young adult again. Uh, that he had to count on the sympathy of a colleague at work that, that would let him know if what he was seeing was a real person or a ghost. Because he got to a point when he couldn't tell it, and he was an office clerk, and there was a counter. So he would get up from his chair, from his desk, and go to the counter and talk to people. And he noticed that he would go to the counter a number of times until his colleagues said, "But what are you doing? What are you doing there?" And he says, "Well, I saw people there." And then the colleague would just nod whenever it was a real person, so that he would stand up and go, because his ability to see was such that everyone looked absolutely real.
Yeah. And my question is this new, though? Is this something that Spiritism invented?
No, I think Spiritism has had the curiosity and got the courage to catalog, to research and catalog and acknowledge that the phenomena happens, has happened always, and there have been a number of accounts throughout history, and of course everywhere, in every place, in every village, and especially in this country, there will always be stories. How many literature is filled with ghost stories? They're quite popular because they appeal to imagination, or they relate to history, some or to buildings and places. So they've been everywhere through time. And people seem to enjoy it. It is to love the story. It's just that what we're saying is as well, that's not just fiction. Of course, there will be fiction for about all sorts of things.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think that's a good point also, that, look, does that mean that everything that we hear is true? No, not necessarily. We know that. But also, just because there are the false accounts do not cancel or know the true one.
Yeah, then I say it's within reason. But what is what is reasonable to believe? If I want to take something, a story of like that seriously, what is acceptable? What would it be? That you see the apparition, you see a glimpse of somebody or place at a certain place. It could be a closed place or an open place, on the road, in the forest, in the woods, in the fields. Yes, it's possible. Is that dangerous? Is that a threat? No.
Yeah.
So why are people seeing sometimes, not all the time, but sometimes, occasionally? Why is that? Are they connected to the energy of a place that they've loved, or they felt that made an impression on them? And they're probably revisiting something or trying to revisit something or somewhere that they love, or they're probably seeking help because really, honestly, they were not meant to be there, but they find themselves there.
I like that questioning, because I think that's ultimately that's something that, if you think about, look, once we understand that this happens, why is this allowed? What is the purpose behind this happening? I think that is such an important question. And for me, it goes back to the intention, right? The intention of the spirit. We always go back to the same message, which is spirits are just like us. They have desires, intentions, tendencies, goals. So, and we are connected to them through what we have in common. And spirits, they might render themselves visible with good intentions or with not so good intentions. And in theory, any kind of spirit would be able to do that if they are allowed. In theory, they may, but they need to be allowed to do that. But any kind of spirit will be allowed to do that. Why would a spirit with not so good intentions make themselves visible? Because they want to frighten them, because they want to revenge for something, because they want to play a trick on someone, just like a living person would try to frighten or do something to somebody to scare them. But what if they had good intention? Why would be doing that? As you said, Faye, maybe they're bringing consolation, maybe they're helping somebody who is mourning, maybe they're giving advice, maybe they're bringing to them a moment or an experience that will make them reflect and think about things and search things and start investigating things they have not before. Maybe they ask for assistance, as you said.
Yeah.
So the possibility or not, I think, is as important as the understanding of why is this happening? What should I be taking from it? I want to just, before we go on, I want to just say where I got my inspiration for today's topics from. And it will come with no surprise. That, let me bring it up. There you go. Of course, I went to the source. I went to the Medium's book. And the Medium's book has a chapter 6 that pretty much talks about visual manifestations. And it's interesting that we're talking about, but maybe people imagining things and so on, because Kardec was very clever as he is on approaching things first from questions. What would be the main questions that make sense for us to ask when you're discussing this? There's like several questions that it goes through that. Then, based on everything that the spirits already explained to us, there's an essay on apparitions. That's about globular spirits. And then the hallucination theory, I think that's an important one, where we investigate and understand the difference. Of course, we know hallucinations exist. But how do you know then if somebody is telling something they're seeing or if it's something they're hallucinating? So Kardec is very careful in going through all of that. Right. I want to go back to the question, did Spiritism invented seeing, communicating, mediumship? And we said no. So Faye, are there any anecdotes or examples or ideas or things that you heard from before Kardec, before Spiritism, all the religions, that perhaps we can look from a different perspective once we understand visual manifestation?
Well, I can tell. Yes, I've heard a number of them from friends, from relatives, people who were sensitive, and myself. I've had a few very quite remarkable experiences like that of being in the place and and seeing people in nice, sometimes not so nice circumstances, but they were probably trying to say what happened. They were probably just saying they regretted that or they're asking for help. I've had opportunities to see people, especially around the roads when driving. I was in a car along the roads, and my mentor at the time was my aunt. She was a fabulous medium and teacher to me, and she told me I was a girl, and she told me whenever you see a person walking alongside the road on a highway, say a little prayer, because that's probably someone who's looking for the way home. And I would see a number of them, and she said, "Did you see that one?" I said, "Yes." Well, that was a spirit.
Yeah.
Yeah, because she could see.
Mm-hmm.
And so we would be along the road and see which ones were and which ones were not. You know, so when you think, don't you find it peculiar that you see in the place where there's nothing, and there's someone walking and walking as if there was somewhere to go? Why would this person be walking along this path? It was interesting. And I met a lady once. I was in a historical town in Brazil, and you would think that whenever someone comes along the road, even if it's a quiet road, imagine the scene that there's a quiet road and a few ladies talking to next door neighbor. You know, the natural thing is, if a car, a bicycle, a dog, anything breaks that silence because they're talking quietly, it's natural for people to just turn their heads, to just look, because something's broken that silence. And I saw this woman. It was kind of an elderly woman, but looking strong, walking, at steady paces, fast pace, heavily down the road. And she was talking, and she was kind of shouting, she was singing. It was a mixture of chanting and saying things and walking towards me. And I I was sitting on this wall, and I noticed that nobody turned their heads. I thought that's probably one of these folkloric characters in the village. There's always someone in the village. No one ever turned a head to look at her, to even acknowledge that she was there with all that noise, all that racket. And she came to talk to me. And she talked to me for a while. Then she started talking about my future. I didn't know who she was. And I'd just say, you gotta be careful with that person, with that man. And I was trying to think, what was she talking about? And she was not this one, the other one. She said lots of things, and I was just quiet. And then when the conversation turned to tone that I wasn't quite happy, but I didn't say anything. I just thought, I said, I don't like where it's going. And she says, I see, you don't like it, you scare me. And then she started laughing again and back to her own chant and said, would you have anything for me? I says, I've got an apple. She took the apple, walked 3-5 paces, and disappeared. She was just real, beautiful, and she was just real as you and I. She was talking right next to me, and it was extraordinary. Because if it's someone who's been working hard, or sleeping rough, the white cotton, the raw cotton that she was wearing was pretty clean. It looked a bit tired, a bit worn out, but clean.
Mm-hmm.
And the pack on her, the pink, wrapped in the pink, what was like a pink fabric over her head. It was like this satin sort of. Also looked clean, tired, old, but clean.
Wow, so that vivid, like
that vivid, yes.
But you remember the details.
Yes, and then I'm thinking about it, but she meant well. And now that I'm saying this to you, she was wearing something pink, and pink would be the color from this part, from near the heart. There would be a chakra that would have that pink tone and vibration.
Mm-hmm.
Is that a coincidence? That's how she clad herself in white and pink,
mm-hmm.
and looked so happy. Yeah.
Well, thank you, Faye, for sharing that story.
So how did she do that? I could only think that the place was probably so heavily loaded with energy, If you could see it, it would be like fog, because you could feel it everywhere. The vibration of the stones and the crystals and the place itself. Was that enough to help her to make herself visible?
And probably visible to you only, not because the others did not even notice or acknowledge that presence. Yeah.
Actually, I remember now that I said, because I had to go back to school, so I was walking up the road because I wanted to know who she was. And I asked one of the ladies who was still there by her door, I asked, have you seen that lady that was talking to me? And she says, no. Did you see one that she was just chanting? I was sorry, I didn't see anyone. I thought, well, she's pulling my leg. No, she wasn't. She hadn't. And the other one, have you seen anyone? No.
Well, there you go.
Yeah.
So I think thank you for sharing that, because it's more common than we give credit to, because we are quick to associate, this with like Aj's story and so on. But I did a quick search on mediumship in that sense, in the sense of seeing someone or seeing something and receiving either a cry for help or receiving a message and so on. And I wanted to go outside Spiritism to try to understand, okay, but is this Spiritism or not? We know it isn't, because mediumship is not something. Mediumship is a natural phenomenon that just happens regardless of your religion. And I started to look and search for, okay, but where is this then seen? How is it talked about in other religions? And the first one, and I have a few examples from different religions, but the first one that came to me was the apparitions of Mary. How many apparitions of Mary? How many different Virgin Marys don't we have? Right?
That's true.
Hundreds and hundreds of apparitions. And to the point that the Church, the Vatican, they recognize it. They allow the bishops to validate it independently, and they recognize some of these.
Yes.
Like you have the apparition in Portugal for the three
shepherds.
The two shepherds.
Yes.
We have a few apparitions in France. We have apparitions everywhere.
Yeah, they all take the name of the location where they were seen.
Yeah,
it's true.
So let's bring this from the possibility, the explanation of a mediumistic phenomenon. Perhaps those people, those children, those shepherds or whatever, that saw that, perhaps they were mediums. They were allowed in the moment to see that spirit. They had a special message to share. Because in the majority of those cases, what we have is we have an apparition and a message guiding us, telling us to reinforce our faith, to reinforce, look, we're not Catholic here, but it doesn't matter, right? In the end, we need to look at the real message. If it's a good spirit sending a message to help us, that's what matters. So telling us to renew our faith and what to do and where to direct our attention. Perhaps it was an enlightened spirit that had the possibility to make itself materialized. Perhaps the people that were there were able to saw it as mediums with that ability to see a spirit. Hundreds. I think, I don't know if I have it here.
Yes, that's true. In Lourdes, I think it's so that those crowds would see it.
Yeah.
Yes.
But it doesn't stop in that, right? Let's go to one of the probably most emblematic and important moments of religious history. Moses. How did he receive the commandments? He went away, and in a moment of meditation or work or details to be seen, he received that the Ten Commandments, the information. How did he receive that? Did he see someone to talk to him? Did he hear it? Did the stones materialize itself? I don't know. But there was there, again, let's see as a possibility for a mediumistic phenomenon. Perhaps a very enlightened spirit sent by God was there, made itself visible, and talked to him and explained it to him and brought to him the message that he needed to bring up.
Well, yeah.
Because one thing we cannot deny, Moses, throughout his time, there was a moment where he declared that the communication with spirits was to be banished.
Mm.
How can you banish something that doesn't exist? Right?
Yeah.
One is studying it. So there are a few things that come out of that specific moment. One is, if it was banished, it must have existed. But why was it banished? We understand after studying it that was exploited in a way that instead of helping people was pretty much used as a way of tricking people, getting their money, and and so on. But it doesn't take away the fact of the possibility that existed, that was done. And perhaps that was even how he received the commandments.
Right. Well, to also remember that when we were talking about the land, and I talked about Joan of Arc, and Joan of Arc was initially inspired by the spirits that she saw, who presented themselves as someone that she knew, so she wouldn't be frightened. You know, she presented as a saint of her devotion, so that she would feel familiarized and not frightened, and as angels that we expected to see, because in order to impart their message, to relay their message, it didn't matter the name or the appearance. What mattered was that they wouldn't cause any harm or frighten her in any way, because the message was more important than who they might have been.
You see?
Yeah.
Another famous character important in history that we can, let's see it from with the clear descriptions of her life, the encounters that she had, where she was receiving the guidance from. Let's flip it and see from the perspective of mediumship.
And that was taken to her trial. I think her life and trial is one that's been the most recorded in history, in every single detail. And she never denied, she said it. But who told you? Well, the spirits told me. The saints, the angels, and the people that I see told me. They told me to speak to the king.
Yeah.
So, and that's what was her strength. Now, she probably had elements to add to the environment to help the manifestation, or if they were of a very higher sphere and a higher rank, they would have their own ways of manipulating energy to make themselves visible to her environment that was probably vibrating at a lower frequency than the ones in which they actually lived. So that was something that was explained in physics. Yeah.
In the same line, we can keep going. Abraham was visited by 3 angels.
Yes.
Mary and Joseph, visited by Gabriel.
Yes.
Again, those could be mediumistic phenomena explained through mediumistic phenomena, visual manifestations. Now you can say, oh, but all of that is, Western religions, Western experiences. Okay, then let's go to the other side. The Vedas. First of all, Vedas, the Hinduism, the book of Hinduism. is pretty much this vast explanation about mediumship and the communication interactions between the two realms and so on. So Hinduism on its own, I think on its own, like the core of it is upon mediumship and the ability of communicating with the other one. But I also looked into Buddhism, and I came across, I do not pretend to know a lot about Buddhism, but I came across the example of one of Buddha's closest disciples, and I am going to butcher his name now. I believe it says Moggallana, something like that. And that was one of Buddha's closest disciples, and he was famous for his that's called supernatural but mediumistic abilities. And the main, I'll tell you a little story about him. One of the main things that this disciple was famous for was for the ability to visit and see people on the other side, to the point that there is a specific story where his parents passed away, and then in this moment where he was trying to contact them and visit them, he was able to find his dad in a good place, enlightened, working and so on. His mother, he couldn't find it. So upon researching a bit more and searching for her, he found her in a place of suffering, a lot of suffering. And that what triggered him to try to understand how could he help his mother from here, so she could leave the place that she was and the sufferings that she was enduring. And
Yes.
that was a big transformation for him that made him develop and instigate further charity towards others. So the specific elements around praying for souls who are suffering and helping one another. So again, look at the key message that came out of that experience in Buddhism.
Mm-hmm.
Nothing to do with Spiritism.
Yes.
But super connected. Pretty much, very much the same actually. Ability of seeing others, and based on that, helping, learning, and spreading and sharing a message that you're learning. So, visual manifestations. They are there. They are around us. If you want to know more, Medium's book. It's not about the religion. I think your religion, I think that's probably the important message in the end. Being this or that religion doesn't change the fact of mediumship exists and visual manifestations exist. Now, understanding about it, the Medium's book is one of the best ones that can help us, guide us in that understanding. You don't need to leave your religion for that. You just need to complement with the understanding of how this phenomena works. I think that's all we can ask for, I suppose, ourselves.
I think at least it would be a way to study in an organized, didactic form to address the subject, and from then on, people would find all sorts of books and literature. It is a more scientific, more intricate things that we could or we would address here. But like I say, it's the sort of information that is worth and is very interesting to find out more about, because it's as part of our nature, of our environment as ourselves, and and the plants and the rocks and the animals and everything that we see. Because everything has got an essence of energy. And this energy is manifested in different ways. That's many times independent of their materialized, their material condition.
Yep.
I mean, they do have a material condition, which is not the dense one that we're used to, that makes our more immediate perception of an environment. They are still our environment, but in a subtler degree of it.
Very well said, Faye. It's just an invitation to kind of bring this out of the occult into something natural that you can explain and understand. Just like any other science, let's say.
It's just like air. We don't see it, but we know that it's there.
Yeah, exactly. Look, our time is up. So let me go to our announcements before we say our goodbyes.
Okay.
As usual, here you go. We have Spiritual Light. It's tomorrow. It happens every Wednesday. Different topics, different guests. Make sure that you are following Bus so you don't miss out. And funnily enough, the Medium's Book Study Group from SSL every Saturday from 10:30 to 11:30 UK time. We are together studying the Medium's Book item by item. Have many questions, stories, things to share. If you'd like to join us, have the details of it here. And that is it for today.
Yes. Well, it's been lovely speaking with you and having your company and see. And I hope our friends have enjoyed it. Does that happen?
Yes. Thank you very, very much, Faye. It was a pleasure as usual. If you guys out there want to send any ideas, any comments or so on, please put them in the box. Or we have a QR code now in the end. If you want to be anonymous about it, you can also just scan the QR code and send us your question or suggestions, and we'll bring them up next time.
Yeah.
Thank you, thank you, thank you. Have a wonderful evening and see you in 2 weeks.
Yeah, see you soon. Bye.
Bye.